This is a Get Your Notebook episode of Disaffected. We're going to be doing a class on Cluster B basics. What are personality disorders and how do they differ from other so-called mental illnesses? As always, we're going to be looking at the B cluster of personality disorders called the dramatic and erratic personality disorders. The ones that are all linked together by narcissism and distorted emotional processing. What is a clinical narcissist? What's a borderline? What's a histrionic? What is antisocial personality disorder? We're going to address all of that, and I'm going to give you a condensed tour of the archetypal faces and presentations of Cluster B with examples that you'll recognize. But first up tonight, the Minnesota vibe has finally reached my state of Vermont. This week, dozens of leftists poured into the streets in South Burlington to harass and frustrate immigration cops on the hunt for an illegal alien who had already been deported, snuck back into the country, and then got arrested for drunk driving right here in Vermont this January. They wanted to protect him from deportation. And this is a guy that they are calling, I kid you not, a neighbor. This is the show that looks at politics, culture, and relationships through a psychological lens. I am your host, Josh Slocum. It's March 15th, 2026. So we watched brainwashed leftists storm through Minneapolis in recent months, trying to frustrate the immigration officers who were trying to get illegal aliens out of the country. For years, almost half of American society has been in a full-fledged cult that's got them completely severed from reality. Severed from instinctive self-preservation, severed from their own normal, affectionate feelings for their own families, their own towns, and their own kind. Alone among every other identifiable cultural, racial, or national identity group, white Americans, and white Europeans as well, but white Americans live with reversed moral polarity. Humans normally extend affection and protection first to their own immediate family and home, then to their town, state, or community, then to their nation. Not white Americans on the left, and they are the only group with this characteristic. The closer they are to a person, the more they hate that person, and the harder they work to try to punish that person close to them. They have an excessive positive bias and positive regard for outgroups, people who are not their family, not their religion, not their nationality, not their interest and identity group. Anyone who is outside and other is warmly welcomed by these people at the expense of people who are actually should be within their inner circle. White leftists put their own lives in danger by confronting cops who are following the law, and all of this to help illegal aliens and criminals escape. When they do escape and they murder Americans like Blake and Riley or Jocelyn Nungare, white leftists, they're not upset about the murder or the rape of their own American girls. They're not sympathetic to the devastated mothers and fathers. They start talking about the plight of the illegal aliens. They double down. We're in a cluster B personality society, a clinically narcissistic society. Cluster B runs on moral reversals. Left is right, black is white, ugly is beautiful, sweet is bitter, love is hate, and contempt is caring. We hear it in their terminology. Cutting the breasts off confused, mentally ill teenage girls and chemically castrating feminine boys, they call gender-affirming care. It's a reversal of truth and a reversal of morality. For those of a Christian persuasion, it's an example of the satanic impulse. Obviously, it was only a matter of time until an ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, an ICE incident happened here in the Green Mountain State. These are federal cops, and their job is to catch border jumpers and detain them in advance of deportation, hopefully. What ICE cops are doing is normal. It's legal. It's called police work. It's their duty. It's their job. This is normal. Before 5 years ago, I wouldn't have had to say that. Few Americans before this current era believed that they had the right to physically interfere with police and de-arrest people. That is what they call it. We're gonna do a de-arrest. The very idea is astonishing, but it's new normal now. You recall Renee Good and Alex Preddy, both in Minneapolis. They tried this shit and they got shot and killed for their efforts, and then they brought it on themselves. Renee Good parked her car in the middle of the street to stop ICE cops from being able to pass and get to their guy. When they told her to move, she taunted them. And at the behest of her girlfriend, who screamed, "Drive, baby, drive," she slammed on the gas, hit one of the cops, and got shot in the head and died. Alex Preddy had 2 encounters, at least 2, with ICE cops before he died. A few weeks before his death, he brawled with them and kicked out the taillight of a police cruiser while screaming obscenities and telling them to get the fuck out. He should have been arrested right then, but he wasn't. 2 weeks later, he got into it again. He put his hands on the cops and tried to stop them from arresting a woman. And in the confused scuffle, we still don't have the whole thing out. The investigation has not been released. But in that confused scuffle, it appears that the cops thought he was reaching for his gun. He was carrying. And they shot him, apparently in the belief that they needed to before he shot them. We'll see. The left, the media, of course, erupted and called these both murders, cold-blooded murders. To the left, understand this. If you're in danger, according to the left, you are obliged to allow leftist agitators or blacks or browns or other kinds of criminals. You are obliged to let them punch you, let them rape you, and let them kill you. And if you try to defend yourself, you might end up in prison. What shocks me is how those 2 examples of fatal consequences in Minneapolis have done nothing at all to stop the crazy superannuated hippies and glazed-eyed Gen Zers from pulling the same stunts in cities around the country. I think that they think, including the old people who are like 80 years old, we're going to see some of them tonight, I think they actually believe that they're in a video game or a TikTok reel where nothing bad actually happens. It's just virtual. They're not deterred by this. They're not scared for their lives. Only complete cult indoctrination can explain this. So let's look at what happened in South Burlington, Vermont this past week. On March 11th, ICE officers were pursuing a 24-year-old illegal alien from Mexico. They found a car registered to him. His name was Davy Daniel Corona Sanchez. They pursued that car. And the car had several people in it, and it fled the police and crashed into 2 other cars while they were fleeing the police. The cops saw people get out of the car and run into what appeared to be an abandoned house, a private home in South Burlington. Mr. Corona Sanchez, by the way, the 24-year-old illegal Mexican, he was deported from the United States in 2022. Then he came back. He jumped the border again because why not? Joe Biden said it was okay. Joe Biden said it was okay. This year, January of 2026, he was arrested for drunk driving in Middlebury, Vermont. It's unclear why he was released again, but we can assume it's because of liberal judges and prosecutors. Vermont obviously has a coordinated network of leftist agitators who are somehow getting inside information on the movements of immigration cops. There's a mole somewhere in the authorities here that's feeding information to these people, because a crowd of dozens of them descended on the scene immediately to stop the cops from getting their man. How did they know they were going to be there? How did they know? Hey, South Burlington police and government, we know what you're doing. We do. Look how our weekly progressive paper, 7 Days, characterizes the affair. Headline. And don't you love the advertisement that came up on that? Cannabis made the Vermont way. Headline. Man sought by ICE wasn't in besieged South Burlington home. Besieged South Burlington home. Besieged. Because cops are bad and they're Nazis and they just siege. Well, the cops did find 3 apparent illegals inside the house, though. 7 Days describes 2 of them as simply from Ecuador, and that they have, quote, applied for asylum. And how does 7 Days, the newspaper, know that they've applied for asylum? Because a local nonprofit migrant organization told them so. The paper refuses to say that they are illegal aliens. And the third man is also from Latin America, almost certainly illegal as well, though no local media will say so. I checked them all. They won't say it. They're all in jail, these three. But 7 Days makes sure to tell readers that none of them have been charged with a crime. That was in the article. You see the trick, right? They're pretending that jumping the border and breaking into the country is not a crime. That's the trick. They haven't been charged with a crime. They do know that being here illegally, it's right in the word, right? Being here illegally, crime. They do know. If any leftists are watching this, aren't you tired of being lied to and condescended to? I guess not. So what did it look like on scene when mysteriously dozens of people showed up knowing exactly where to go and how to frustrate the cops? Well, here's a still image from our local NBC station. Couldn't get any video. They've got that locked down. You're seeing a scuffle with, it looks to be about 2 or 3 cops trying to get a hold of, there's a white woman in her early 20s wearing a Palestine keffiyeh scarf around her head. She was refusing orders. They had to manhandle her and try to cuff her. I did watch the video, which unfortunately I can't play for you. While this is all going on, the people around them are screaming, just like you heard in the Minneapolis videos, "What are you doing? What the fuck is wrong with you?" It's crazy. They literally all have the same brain chip in there with the same pre-programmed phrases. So we were able to get some video from our local channel WCAX, which we're showing you as part of Fair Use. Let's roll CAX flashbang, Kevin.
The person ICE was looking for ended up going inside a home on Dorset Street. Federal agents stood outside waiting for a warrant to take him into custody. At this time, we still don't know the man's identity or why federal agents were trying to detain him. Dozens of protesters, along with the organization Migrant Justice, showed up shortly after, protesters confronting the agents. After the tense confrontation, things largely remained calm for the rest of the afternoon. Protesters singing and chanting, while more people showed up bringing food and water.
For barbecuing hot dogs.
Late in the afternoon, a federal agent arrived and announced to the crowd of protesters that they had a warrant signed by a federal judge and asked people to leave the area. Around 5:30, federal immigration agents broke down the front door of the house and made an arrest of a man inside the home. Protesters crowded the house as agents forcibly removed him, many blocking their vehicles as they attempted to leave the detainee. Over the next hour and a half, several protesters were arrested as federal, state, and local agencies slowly left the scene. The night ended after federal agents set off several flashbangs.
Yeah, that was a flashbang. That's another one.
They then left, leaving the protesters behind.
Look at all those masks.
They, along with Migrant Justice, stayed to review the day's events, tend to those hurt in the scuffle, as well as plan for next steps going forward. In South Burlington, Kendall Clare, Channel 3 News.
I love that in the singing. We are not afraid. Yeah, you should be, you idiots, but you're not. Oh, I long to see you get what you have coming to you. I long for it. By the way, these fools are all over Reddit, the Vermont subreddit, claiming victory. They actually... They called the South Burlington police on the federal police, claiming to report a kidnapping. Yeah, they called it a kidnapping. They're titling their posts, "I've got love for my neighbor." Reminder, this neighbor is an illegal Mexican, once deported in 2022, who then illegally broke into the country again and got arrested on Vermont's own roads this January for drunk driving. That's the neighbor. This is how they're framing it on Reddit. Protesters in Vermont being brutalized today. Brutalized. These people are, this is just masturbation for them. They love this. This is, it is. It's community theater. This is what they do instead of joining a community theater troupe, except it has dangerous consequences. It's the same bullshit. It's like Waiting for Guffman, but even stupider. Meanwhile, our state governor, alleged Republican Phil Scott, had this to say about the incident. Quote, Vermont Governor Phil Scott released a statement Thursday about the operation, saying that, quote, what unfolded yesterday in South Burlington was totally unnecessary, end quote. The governor went on to say that actions taken by federal law enforcement, quote, demonstrated a lack of training, among other issues that put state law enforcement and peaceful protesters in a, quote, difficult situation. Next up. Scott specifically went on to thank Vermont law enforcement officers for their professionalism while maintaining the safety of others. Still, Vermont's governor noted that, quote, how the events concluded and the tactics deployed by federal officials, as well as the actions of those there to agitate, further escalated a situation that was avoidable from the start. It's examples like this that further divide communities and law enforcement and result in more harm being done than good. Is that so, Phil? Is that so? He's such a traitor. Phil Scott is the same guy who signed an illegal executive order during COVID that made it claimed to make it illegal. I refuse to obey it, but made it illegal for me to walk outside of my house with anyone else walking next to me who was not a person who lived in the house that I lived in. That's how far he went. Republican. South Burlington Police Chief William Breaux said this at a press conference. That would not have been how I would have done it. This plan was not executed to our standard. Oh, I'm sure, Billy Boy, that you boys down at the South Burlington Police Department on Gregory Drive next to the old Dave's Automotive have really got top-notch operational plans. You hayseeds. There's more to this story from our local news station. Can't even tell you. They don't even identify themselves because they just go by their website, mychamplainvalley.com. Quote, this is from William Breaux, South Burlington Police Chief. He said, though, that he couldn't be prouder of how local and state law enforcement responded. Breaux and Philippex said that local or state officers avoided using force and none assisted with the actual arrest, though they were challenged on the latter count with some photos showing a state trooper stepping inside the building of the arrest. Listen to this shit. Listen to this. The fucking cops are telling you how proud they are that they didn't help their fellow cops. And the news is like, well, some people say they did assist because the state trooper actually went inside. This is insane. So that's the news from the open air insane asylum that I live in, the Cluster B cauldron called the state of Vermont. You know, when you live in New England long enough, I've been here. How long have I been here? 24 years now. I grew up in the Northeast, but in upstate New York, just a hop skip over to New England. I'm not joking. When you live here long enough and you observe, there's something wrong with this place. There's something wrong with the culture, and it's been wrong for a long time. There's something dark and disturbed that's seeped right into the fabric of New England culture. And you no longer question how the witch trials happened here. Seriously, it's no mystery to me at all anymore. There's something insane, fundamental to this place, which is really sad because it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever lived, and it looks the way I want my surroundings to look. It's got colonial houses, it's got old housing stock, Victorians, rolling mountains, it's verdant and green. You know, it's called New England because they settled here, but it also looks like England. But the psychology is screwed up. All right, after the break, this is where you get your notebooks out. We're going to do a tour of what cluster B personality disorders actually look like, with examples and common subtypes that you're going to recognize.
Dozens of protesters, along with the organization Migrant Justice, showed up shortly after. Protesters confronting the agents.
Do you see that delicious beef on your screen? That can be yours, my friend, if you go to biltongusa.com, run by the Van Buren family, who are sponsors of our show, and we're very grateful. Biltong is cured meat. It's the South African way of doing it, very thinly sliced, air-dried, and cured with spice and vinegar. You can get your biltong in any spice level you want, and there are different kinds of exotic meat. It rotates. I don't know if they've got venison in right now, but I've had some. It's delicious. I eat this stuff all the time, and it's a wonderful alternative to a bag of chips or anything like that, because it's just protein and high quality animal fat, and it is really, really tasty. It's better than beef jerky. If you like beef jerky, you haven't tasted anything like this. It's not ground up and put together. It's just real slices of beef. Check them out. Don't forget to look at their sideline in imported European groceries too. They've got some delicious treats. You might even, you Brits, I guess I shouldn't say this, but you might even be able to get Bird's custard. They certainly have good British biscuits, or what we call cookies. Go to biltongusa.com, give them some love and some business, and be sure to use promo code Josh so that they know you came from my show, and you get 10% off your order. "12 years ago, I bought a second house, a duplex house with 2 apartments, to give my mother a place to live that she couldn't be evicted from. For most of her adult life, my mother hasn't worked. She's been on welfare and disability. She wasn't really unable to work. She just didn't want to work. But I didn't understand that for a long time. When I bought that duplex, I rented the other apartment. I rented it out at market rate so that I could afford to give my mother rent for $700 on a 3-bedroom apartment that would have fetched $1,300 on the open market. That was as low as I could go. Today, it would get $1,700. For years, I'd paid off my mother's back rent and negotiated with landlords who were trying to evict her, trying to keep a roof over her head. And I paid off some of it. For some reason, all that time, it never occurred to me that something was seriously wrong. As a kid, we had moved apartments and moved across the country 12 times by the time I was 13 years old. That pattern never changed with my mother, but this was normal to me because I grew up with it. I thought of my mother as a poor, hardworking, abandoned single mother just doing her best to keep her family together. That is really what I thought. Within 2 years of her moving in, she moved in 2014, life went to chaos. Dozens of texts were blowing up my phone every day, especially during work hours. The sink had a leak that had to be fixed right now. The neighbors were having trashy people over, and couldn't I do something about that? The neighbor children, who my mother called them urchins, well, they were digging up rocks in our backyard. We live in the country here. And they were making things out of those rocks. They were leaving rocks all over the place. Strange cars were coming down the road. Can't I install security lights? Don't I want to keep my mother safe? It was exhausting. And it was baffling because I'd solved my mother's worst problem, and I solved it forever. It could have been forever. I gave her a home at a price that she never could have gotten anywhere else. She'd never have to worry about homelessness. She was living in her son's house. And she wasn't a bit happier, not a bit. Every day I went over to that apartment, she was screaming at someone, either on the phone or in person. Usually her disabled husband, who she called a brain-dead fucking retard. She screamed at my handyman for telling misogynist jokes. She screamed at me for being a bad son and not defending her against that bad, mean man. Early on, I took her over to dinner at the home of a couple of friends, Lisa and Steve. They're deceased now. Lisa and Steve were an older couple, an elderly couple, who treated me like their own son. They treated me like family for more than 20 years. They were the people who privately loaned me $100,000 toward that second house that I couldn't afford. Yeah, I made a lot of foolish decisions. And my mother acted terribly as a result of that kindness. She got into an argument with Steve, her host, and then yelled and cried all the way home in the car, accusing my friend Steve of raising his voice at his own dinner table and disrespecting her. Steve didn't raise his voice to my mother. That didn't happen. I was there. I had an actual flashback, an emotional flashback while I was driving home that night. I was back to 9 years old, and I was trying to cower into a corner and make myself small so that my mother couldn't hit me. I wanted to cover my ears to keep out the screaming. And I was 41 years old, and for the first time in my life, for the first time since one flash of insight that I remember having as a teenager, I spoke to myself in my head clearly. And I said, there's something desperately wrong with your mother, and it has to stop, or something horrible is going to happen. My sister and I initially thought she might be going into dementia. We insisted that she see a doctor. She was not happy about this, but she did. And she took a dementia test, and there was no cognitive decline. She passed the, number the clock phase and tell us who the president is test. It's not really that difficult. So what was going on? Well, my sister and I were in denial about the reality of who our mother was, the woman that we had witnessed our entire lives. But my sister was the first one to figure it out. She called me shortly after that and said, Josh, our mother is not going senile. She has a personality disorder. She's a narcissist, and I think you need to read about personality disorders. That was the magic moment that made everything click into place for me. I spent 2 or 3 days doing nothing but reading about cluster B personality disorders. And actually, in real life, my jaw really physically did drop open several times. Really? I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was reading forums, I was reading journal articles, and then I started on books about borderline and narcissistic personality disorder. That week, when I first started getting my education, my whole life with my mother in the past suddenly started making sense when it never made sense before. What had seemed disconnected and weird all slotted into place like a machine that sorted things by part size. I was seeing clearly, and what I was seeing was horror. If you want more details on what it was like over 40 years ago, you can go back to my 2-part episode from 2021 called Over the Borderline Parts 1 and 2. I tell the story in detail. What I figured out is that my mother has all the traits of narcissistic and borderline personality disorders with secondary psychopathic traits. In plain terms, she is a bad person who did not love her children and did not love anyone, and who enjoyed exploiting them financially and emotionally. She liked hurting people that she said she loved. You could see the glint in her eyes, and you could hear it in her voice. You could hear the smirk in her voice. My brother and sister and I had blinded ourselves to this because it was too painful to face the reality of what our mother was. There is no pain as profound, spiritually, soul level profound, as discovering that your mother never loved you and discovering that she enjoyed hurting you. I had an actual nervous breakdown. My alcoholism got worse. I threw up and had diarrhea about a dozen times a day, every day. I couldn't eat, and I almost lost my job. But I did make it through. I evicted her. I endured the false claims of elder abuse she tried to make. I battled her lies in eviction court, and I won. I made it through embarrassing meetings with my bosses and supervisors after my mother and her husband sent multiple letters to my supervisors telling them that I was insane, that I was an abuser, and that they needed to fire me. I didn't know it then, but that time of life was my awakening. My life changed then, bigger than it had changed on any other axis. I could see reality for the first time. I could start seeing it. And I saw that my life and the way I'd organized my life and the people that I had in my life, that it was all full of cluster B personality behavior. I learned that the modern political and cultural left that I considered my home was in fact just a cluster B personality cult. That's why I'm here talking to you. That's why I do this show. I consider it, forgive the phrase, I consider it my life's work to help other people see what I found out the hard way. And most people, if they do see it, if you're seeing it, I'm sorry, but I'm also not sorry because I want you to see it. You're going to have to find out the hard way too, but I hope to be a touchstone to help you if you're going through this. The domestic and the child abuse in my home as a child was motivated by the same psychology that makes the modern left what it is today. Abusers and exploiters call themselves victims, and they call the people that they hurt the abusers. They have no love for their own kind, but they'll lavish praise on other people outside the family who flatter them or who bow and scrape for them. They're congenital liars, all of them. They have the devil in their ears and their hearts. They call black white, they call beauty ugly, they call moral and psychological chains freedom and self-actualization, living their best life. So I'm going to take you on a tour of the cluster B disorders. If you can learn even a little bit of what I had to learn, you might be able to better protect yourself from being hurt, or at least to stop it going on as long as it might otherwise. You can avoid wasting years trying to love someone who does not love you and will never love you back. And no exaggeration, you might save your life. As you know, I offer peer coaching and consulting sessions privately, and I have clients whose parents tried to kill them. I have clients whose children tried to kill them. With cluster B personalities, violence, theft, and even murder are often just on the other side of a door. When you have cluster B in your life, you are actually living in what you think only happens on fictional or true crime shows. You're wrong. That's what you're seeing on those shows. You're seeing cluster B personalities. There's a reason it's called true crime. It's because it's true. It's not just on TV or your podcast player. It's real life. So what is a personality disorder? Is it a mental illness? Is it medical? Is it something else? Personality disorders are a kind of mental disturbance that's much deeper and much more dangerous and mostly incurable than anything you might think of as mental illness. They're not like depression, for example. They're not like clinical anxiety and panic, even though people with personality disorders often do experience those symptoms, just like people without personality disorders can experience depression and chronic anxiety. But personality disorders are not mood disorders. They're not like manic depression, now called bipolar. It's literally a category error. They're in an entirely different category of disturbance. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine that you have a friend called Susan who experiences occasional but very deep bouts of depression that debilitate her temporarily. Normally, she's good at her job. She's good company. She's normally very sociable. But when that depression comes over her, it's like she becomes a different person. She has no affect. She goes flat. She won't leave her bed for days. She won't shower or eat. When she's like this, you say to yourself, that's not Susan. That's not my friend. She's buried under this depression. But then when Susan's depression lifts and she goes back to her normal self, personality disorders are not like this. They're not symptoms that come and go. That's why they're called personality disorders. The term means what it says. It means there's something fundamentally wrong with who that person is. The them of them. There's something wrong with it. It's that, yes, it is personal. There's something wrong with his fundamental character. Personality disorders are deeply ingrained, severe distortions of emotion and intellectual processing that are very marked and often obvious to other people, some other people, but a lot of us have been brainwashed and we don't know what we're seeing. And personality disorders have a strong effect on most or all domains of that person's life. They are what animates abusive relationships. serial cheating and infidelity, exploitation of loved ones, theft, exploitation of bosses, friends, coworkers, and employees. People with personality disorders create messes and then blame those messes on other people. If you've ever known someone who's lazy, disorganized, overly dramatic, and who blames every bad episode that happens to them on someone else or some outside system, you have met somebody with a cluster B personality disorder. None of you listening or watching, none of you have not met a cluster B. It's not possible. All of you have met them. Many of you have them in your families. When modern researchers, 19th century and forward, when modern researchers and writers started investigating these mental phenomena in the 19th century, they spoke much more plainly and directly about it than we do now. In our modern era, medical people look for excuses for what is simply bad moral character. That's what cluster B is. It's bad moral character. We talk about personality disorder as if they were a disability or a condition that someone has that you can't help. We don't want to judge. What we call personality disorders today used to be called moral insanity. Let's go back to the 19th century. This is a summary from an article called Moral Insanity, A Brief History. It was published in the periodical Psychiatric News, and the publication date is May 2001. Quote, "The term moral insanity is unfamiliar to psychiatrists today, but it was an accepted diagnosis in Europe and America throughout most of the 19th century. As late as 1883, the American Journal of Insanity, that was the forerunner of the American Journal of Psychiatry, published an article called Moral Insanity. Individuals who retained their intellectual capacity but harbored strange and unrealistic ideas had puzzled European physicians of the 18th century." Continuing, Dr. J.C. Pritchard of England is credited with being the first to use the term moral insanity. In 1835, he wrote the following: "There's a form of mental derangement in which the intellectual faculties are uninjured, while the disorder is manifested principally or alone in the state of feelings, temper, or habits. The moral principles of the mind are depraved or perverted. The power of self-government is lost or greatly impaired, and the individual is incapable of conducting himself with decency and propriety in the business of life." It's pretty easy to understand. That's pretty clear, isn't it? Not full of jargon. It's not full of excuses. It's what it is. I wish we still spoke this clearly today. So in summary, these people, the personality disorder, they're not schizophrenics. They're not hallucinating. They're not classically mad. They seem to have normal intellectual capacities, but their feelings and how they act on those feelings are markedly at odds with what we call normal or decent people. As I said before, personality disorders used to be known as character disorders. That means moral character. And they should be called that today. They are moral failings, not medical conditions. In the American classification system, there are 3 clusters of personality disorder: A, B, and C. I'm concerned only with cluster B. These are called the dramatic and erratic personality disorders. What binds all of them together is narcissism, even though only one of those 4 has the name narcissism in the label. They're all bound together by narcissism. That is the common trait. All of the cluster B disorders revolve around being self-centered and having profoundly distorted moral reasoning. So what are they? What are these 4? Well, there are ostensibly 4 cluster B personality disorders. I'm going to discuss them that way for convenient shorthand, but with an important caveat. In reality, they're not usually separate and discrete the way this system of classification and labels makes it seem. Excuse me. There are some people who hew closely to the pure and classic definition of a borderline personality or narcissistic personality? Of course there are. But in my experience, most people have a custom mix of traits from more than one of the allegedly 4 discrete disorders. So as an example, my mother fully qualifies by diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder and also fully for borderline personality disorder. She also has a heavy dose of secondary antisocial traits. And antisocial personality disorder is what you know by the terms sociopathy or psychopathy. But she doesn't qualify for a full antisocial personality disorder diagnosis, except on some days. So as I go through these, I'm going to show you some examples from fictional portrayals and from real life. Please remember that these types bleed into each other. You could make good arguments for each of the examples that I'm going to show you that would classify them differently in cluster B than I do. But they all do fit within cluster B. They're all genuine cluster B, right? No knockoffs. You'll also notice as I define these that I'm not using the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual list of criteria verbatim. I'm not doing it. I'm making that choice. It does not capture the plain reality of these conditions in understandable terminology. I'm blending that terminology with my own observations and my own experience. You don't have to take it from me. I ask you to take it from me, but I am accurate in my understanding. This is an allowed move. We get to make, you and I, humans, we get to make judgments. We don't need permission from untrustworthy medical and psychiatric fields. We don't have to bow down to people just because they have doctor for their name. So let's start with borderline personality disorder. Here's a summary you're going to see on your screen. Here are the qualities of borderline personality disorder. They are terrified of abandonment, and they'll go to extreme lengths to avoid abandonment and to keep other people enmeshed with them. They're highly emotionally volatile, and they can go from despair to elation to suicidality and back in minutes, literally minutes, hours, or days. They're usually emotionally manipulative, and they are liable to mistreat and manipulate others while claiming that their targets are the ones victimizing them. Borderlines have a very high rate of suicidal ideation and suicidal threats, as well as completed suicides. To the best of our knowledge, borderline personality disorder is the most dangerous when it comes to suicide. About 10% of diagnosed borderlines actually do follow through and kill themselves. And at bottom, they all have an unstable, diffuse identity. They don't know who they are. And they often take on the personas and traits and hobbies of other people around them situationally. Now, there are 2 classic movies that feature, there are more than 2, but I've picked 2 for you, that feature main characters with borderline personality disorder. Now, all personality disorders, by definition, are extreme. There's no such thing as a mild personality disorder. If it is a personality disorder, by definition, that means it's already at the extreme end. But these characters that I'm going to show you are the extreme of the extreme end. Not all borderlines are this extreme, and they're not all going to look exactly like this. But this is accurate for this type. The movie, do you remember the movie Single White Female from the 90s? It's about a woman who advertises, lives in New York City, advertises for a roommate to share expenses. And she doesn't know this, but she ends up getting a roommate with really deranged with borderline personality. The roommate starts trying to become her, dressing like her, getting her hair cut like her. It's sinister. This is realistic. Take a look at this scene.
Thank you.
This is the roommate getting a haircut and styling it to be just like the woman she moved in with.
You've got to be kidding.
You just should have asked first.
But I wanted it to be a surprise.
Can I have consulting marketplace, please? Sure.
This feels so good on my neck. I didn't think you'd mind.
Thanks.
shower.
Secrets. All right, we can dump out of that, Kevin. That's really what I wanted to show them. So another one that shows the extreme is the 1987 classic Fatal Attraction, starring Michael Douglas and Glenn Close. Glenn Close's character is the type of borderline who has a lot of crossover with the psychopathic. I'm going to talk more about this in a little while. This is the movie where she takes revenge on her married lover who ends up dumping her by boiling his daughter's pet rabbit. That's where the term bunny boiler comes from. It's this movie. And this is a short snippet of a very famous scene in the movie.
I just want to be a part of your life.
Oh, this is the way you do it, huh? Showing up at my apartment?
What am I supposed to do? You won't answer my calls. You change your number. I mean, I'm not going to be ignored, Dan.
You don't get it. You don't get it.
And again, not all borderlines are bunny boilers. They're not all violent that way, but the chances are much higher for that kind of thing with people with a mind like this. Many borderlines present themselves convincingly as wounded birds or lost little waifs in the forest. They never got a break in life. They always need a white knight to save them. Well, they will ruin your life. Run. Let's move on to histrionic personality disorder. Now, I'm not convinced that histrionic personality disorder is truly separate enough to deserve its own category. I go back and forth on this, but I often think that it's really a variant of borderline personality disorder or a subtype. You will often hear feminists mischaracterize the term histrionic as, quote, misogynistic, because they incorrectly believe that the term comes from the same root as hysterical or wandering womb. It does not. That is a false cognate. Histrionic comes from the Greek word hystrios, which translates to like an actor. Feminists also don't like histrionic personality disorder. They hate borderline and histrionic. They're always arguing that these aren't real. They're just ways to oppress women because they don't like seeing out of control emotions in the female style described as pathological. They hate it. And they don't like the fact that these disorders, borderline and histrionic, are indeed more common in women. It's not just an artifact of biased diagnosis. It's not. I used to think it was. Even within the past 10 years, as I became a conservative, I used to believe that. I don't anymore after more experience. But these disorders do occur in men, too. They're not exclusive to women, but they are predominantly women, borderline and histrionic. It ain't equal. And the gays, too, the gay men. So histrionic personality disorder, we'll put this up on your screen. These people have extremely exaggerated emotional responses to things that normal people would take in stride. The emotion could be positive or it could be negative, but the emotions are shallow and fleeting. They're globally theatrical in their emotional expression, and they're prone to extreme hyperbole. They often behave in sexually provocative ways that cross the boundaries of good taste in the context in which they're doing this. Madonna is a good example. Histrionics are often very good. They're often emotionally and sexually irresistible. The crazy hot chick, that's real. That's often the histrionic. They, too, like the borderlines, have an unstable identity, and they often take on the persona of other people situationally. Now, Madonna is someone who is a dyed-in-the-wool cluster B personality who fits the criteria for narcissism, for borderline, and no, her song of that title was not about borderline personality disorder, and also for histrionic. I use her as an example of histrionic personality disorder because her over-the-top sexual provocation, especially in inappropriate contexts, is classic histrionic presentation. Here's an example. I mean, her entire career is this, obviously, but here's an example of her doing this on Jimmy Fallon's show.
So I hope that I have disturbed not only your peace this afternoon, but
you always disturb my peace.
While they watch the show, but I mean that in the best way.
No, yeah, you get in good trouble.
Well, that's when Madonna, who was wearing a black mini dress, proceeded to lie across Jimmy's desk with no warning.
No, why would you? Madonna! Stop it. Oh, my heavens. Stop it. I don't know what to do. Stop it right now. Absolutely. This is... Stop. Yeah, sorry.
See that?
And while Jimmy legit seemed like he didn't know what to do, Madonna seemed as cool.
Okay. So the male histrionic is usually gay. Hi, I'm Josh. I have histrionic traits. That's where the stereotype of gay men being flighty and dramatically emotional comes from. It's real for a lot of us. The stereotype is true. Remember that general statements do not mean every single individual. Supply your own not alls. Nathan Lane's character in the drag farce comedy The Birdcage is prototypical histrionic personality in a gay man. Let's watch that.
Are you trying to ruin me? Don't look at me. I'm hideous, fat and hideous. Oh, Agador, I'm in such pain.
I know, honey. It's gonna pass.
Oh, no, it'll never pass. I hate my life. Oh, there is a packed house out there. That's all I am to you, isn't it? A meal ticket. Can't stand. Never mind about my feelings. Never mind about my suffering. It's just about your show. Not even our show, your show. Well, I want a palimony agreement, and I want one now.
Well, I don't have a palimony agreement on me right now. Is tomorrow all right?
Don't use that tone to me.
What tone?
That sarcastic, contemptuous tone that means you know everything because you're a man and I know nothing because I'm a woman.
You're not a woman.
Oh, you bastard.
Adieu, everybody. Take it easy.
Whatever I am, he made me. I was adorable once, young and full of hope. And now, look at me. I'm this short, fat, insecure, middle-aged thing.
I made you short?
All right, we're going to pick up on the other side of the break, taking a look at narcissistic personality disorder in its many faces, and we'll cap it off with everybody's favorite, the psychopath. I'm talking to you tonight about all the different cluster B disorders and how to identify them. Is this something that's going on in your life? If you need somebody to talk to privately for an hour and confidentially, you can talk to me. That's what I offer through Slocum Consulting. My website is joshuaslocum.net, and I make myself available to people who are dealing with troubled relationships, whether they're family, friends, church groups, academic colleagues, workplace stuff. It all comes up. You don't have to be certain that what you're dealing with is cluster B. And I can't tell you for certain either, except I can tell you if I see the leading indicators. And if you just need somebody to bounce some ideas off of because you don't have the social space to talk about your views on politics and culture without being counseled by your friends and family, I'm there for that too. Check out my calendar at joshuaslocum.net. If you don't see a time on there that suits you, send me an email through the website. I do make off-hours appointments. I'll accommodate you if I can. This is a very good time to do it as well, because for the next couple of weeks, I'm running a discount. It is tax season, and we're all getting prepared to pay the IRS. I certainly am not enjoying myself, and I'd like to make it a little easier for you. So I'm running a pretty big discount, $50 off my normal rate. I'm charging $75 an hour during tax season. So if you want to get in and save a penny, now's the time to do it. joshuaslocum.net. Narcissistic personality disorder. This one is almost self-explanatory, but it can be deceptive. Someone with narcissistic personality disorder is not just someone who's more than usually self-centered or self-absorbed. This is a pathological level, and it's a serious mental derangement. There are several variants of how narcissistic personality disorder presents. And it's important to distinguish them, and I'm going to help you do that in a couple of minutes. But let's do a general roundup. So narcissistic personality disorder, these people have an apparently inflated sense of self, a belief that they're special, that they're better, that they're more deserving than others. This often masks a really deep insecurity. Narcissists are preoccupied with grandiose fantasies of success or fame or recognition. And those fantasies could revolve around their intellect. It could be based on their looks. It could be based on how much money they make. Narcissists have a severely compromised or absent ability to truly empathize with others, to put themselves in other people's shoes. They can't recognize normal feelings in others, and they tend to treat other people as objects, and they're manipulative and dishonest. This description suits the easy to spot type, the overt or the grandiose narcissist. Donald Trump is an overt narcissist. He's the classic male type. Great big personality, brags a lot, says he has the best and most beautiful of anything. He loves flattery, and he can be manipulated by people who tell him what he wants to hear and who big up his ego. Now, you may disagree with me, and at some point in the future, I may disagree with me, because I've changed my mind about Donald Trump several times. But with Trump, I don't think he completely lacks a conscience. And I think he has the capacity for, and sometimes demonstrates, actual empathy for others. To my mind, he's the little boy type of narcissist. He's looking for the love and praise that he didn't feel that he achieved as a child. That's what I think. I don't think he's actually malignant. Gavin Newsom, however, he's a smoother version. He's a classic narcissist, a classic male narcissist, and he's overt. But he blends in some of the more covert ways of expressing narcissism. He uses a lot of feminine feelings and caring talk, which is more common in the covert feminine style or female narcissism. Covert narcissists are harder to spot. They're not as grandiose, and they don't always appear egotistical on the surface. They often affect a wounded persona. They're misunderstood. Their brilliance is never appreciated, and everyone around them constantly fails their expectations. Some are very urbane and polished, like Barack Obama. He's a covert narcissist. He speaks well, and he has the ability to convince people that he cares about grand things that will elevate the human race, hope and change. But his actions are deceptive. He's a racist. He's anti-American, and he's manipulative. He's a liar. But his smooth tongue, along with his black skin, fool an awful lot of people, especially white people. He fooled me for a long time. I voted for the man twice, to my regret. I wasn't going to talk about Hillary Clinton. I voted for her in 2016, too. Oh, my God. Who was I? I think that woman is a straight psychopath. There are a few other subcategories of narcissists that are worth looking at. These are not clinical terms. They're not clinical diagnostic terms, but they do describe real types of people that you will recognize. Let's talk about the somatic narcissist, somatic meaning of the body. The somatic narcissist is the one who is enraptured by her own beauty and her own sexuality and focuses on that. She's obsessed with her physicality. Obviously, Madonna is a somatic narcissist. Jennifer Lopez is another one, a really obvious one. Women like this do everything they can to wear as little clothing as possible, even when they're far past their sell-by date. So here's a picture of Jennifer Lopez at 56 years old on her recent tour wearing a gownless evening strap in tinfoil. I wish I could take credit for gownless evening strap, but I can't. It's hysterically funny. Singer Shirley Bassey, is that how you pronounce her name? I think she's the one who came up with that joke first. Now, here's Jennifer Lopez flaunting what she perceives to be her sexual power by grinding her crotch into the face of a male dancer while showing us floss crawling up towards her anus. Pretty, huh? Can't you just smell that picture? Now, there's another type. You'll like this one. The cerebral or intellectual narcissist is that guy you know from Reddit. This type is almost always a man. I've seen a few women like this, but this is classic male typical cerebral narcissist. And he may indeed be uncommonly intelligent. Sometimes he is. But a lot of times he just thinks he is. What he always is, though, is unsatisfied and displeased by having to condescend to speak to ordinary people. He's the guy on Reddit who says, well, actually, about everything. And he hijacks your thread with a dissertation full of irrelevant data with the purpose of proving you wrong and making himself look smarter than you. He doesn't have conversations with you. He talks at you. He makes words at people as a performance. Let's move right on to the big one, antisocial personality disorder. Antisocial personality disorder is what you know colloquially as sociopathy or psychopathy. And I have to do a little disambiguation of terms here, okay? There is no official definition of either sociopathy or psychopathy. Antisocial personality disorder, whether you like it or not, is the official clinical term. Sociopath and psychopath do not have consensus terminology agreement. Everyone thinks they do, but it causes arguments unnecessarily. People say, well, everyone knows that sociopaths are made by the environment, but psychopaths are born that way. No, it's not true that that's universally agreed on and universally defined. There is no consensus on those definitions. Some people do hew by those definitions, and that's fine, but it's not universal, and you won't find that definition in psychiatric literature, although you'll find it referred to. Many people do categorize that way, and it's a reasonable way to look at it. But it's not true to say this is the official definition, and you're using the word sociopath wrong because you used it for somebody who was born that way. That's not a universal, okay? So another important reminder, most psychopaths are not serial killers. That's a common misunderstanding. Psychopath is not a synonym for murderer, not a synonym for serial killer, and it's not a synonym for criminal. The vast majority of psychopaths or sociopaths are not murderers. Are you surprised about that? Well, that's what you watch Disaffected for. That's pop culture. It isn't reality. Yes, serial killers are always psychopaths. Yes, all serial killers are psychopaths. And psychopaths are much more likely to be criminals or violent than normal range people are. But not all psychopaths are serial killers. I hope that makes sense. This trips people up a lot. So what is antisocial personality disorder? These people have an absent or non-functional ability to empathize with others, a true lack of conscience. It's more pronounced than even narcissistic personality disorder. They have a very limited range of emotions, usually anger, rage, and envy, lust sometimes. Antisocials are prone to a life of cheating or criminality and criminal behavior. Even though not all of them are, they are prone to this. Whether they're caught or whether they go undetected most of their lives. There are a lot of them out there who are actually criminals, but we can't sort of technically call them that because they never get caught. Antisocials are sometimes, not always, but sometimes sadistic. But even if they're not sadistic, meaning they don't take active pleasure, they don't do what they do because they enjoy the pain of other people's suffering. Some do, but some who are not really sadistic don't. But they are always at least unmoved by the pain and suffering they cause others. Even if they're not enjoying it, they simply don't care that they're doing it to you. They will always exploit people for money, fame, and reputation. Now, one pop culture character I'm just going to bring up is a killer, and he's a good example of this type of psychopath. The narcissism in him is obvious too. So again, not all narcissists are psychopaths, but all psychopaths are narcissists. Okay, that's the character Patrick Bateman from the novel and movie American Psycho. And here's a little.
I like to dissect girls. Did you know I'm utterly insane? I simply am not there.
That last line, I'm simply not there. That's good writing. It's good insight. That's not a whole person. But again, most sociopaths and psychopaths are not serial killers. Many are criminals, but not necessarily violent. The smarter ones tend to engage in white-collar crime, for example. The antisocials are the fraudsters. If you know the concept of the con artist, that's a sociopath. And they're leeches who live off others. They don't have any intention of working or doing anything gainful of their own. They have zero conscience, zero conscientiousness, and zero feelings about other people. As you can guess, this shows up in my family too. My niece is a good example of the more common sociopath. After a 3-month stint in a psychiatric hospital many years ago, she was diagnosed with both borderline and antisocial personality disorder. Obviously, we do not speak. I don't let her anywhere near me. Even as a child, I got the unnerving feeling that there was no there. There was no real human there. I know it sounds strange, and I didn't want to believe it when I saw it, but it is true. I could watch this as a girl. I could watch her put on the mask of a cutesy, adorable little girl in order to get what she wanted: money, a toy, a special treat. And as soon as she did, I watched it happen. Her facial muscles went slack. That warm smile just went flat affect. Blank. It's like she literally took a mask off and didn't make any bones about it. Didn't try to hide the transition. Didn't care. As a teenager, she was arrested for shoplifting and she was banned from the local malls. She's now almost 30, and she only ever calls her mother, my sister, when she wants money. She has never asked her mother how she's doing or how she's feeling, ever. And she hasn't spoken to me in about 15 years. The last contact I got from her was a text out of the blue after several years of dead silence. Not even a "Hi, Uncle Josh, how are you?" Just, "Can I stay with you? I don't have any place to live." That was it. I just ignored it and then blocked the phone number. I happen to know that today she is morbidly obese. She is living in a polycule with a lesbian diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and another gay man who's likely mentally similar, who she calls her boyfriend. And about 15 years ago, my niece started telling everyone that she was a man. She's a trans man now. She took on a male name, and she started out by drawing facial hair on herself with an eyebrow pencil and advertising it on Facebook. This young woman has been kicked out of every single friend's parents' house that she ever couch surfed at. She's a leech. During her homeless teen years, she couch surfed, but she was always ejected for bad behavior or for stealing from her friend or her friend's parents. That is the sociopathy that you see more commonly than you see serial killers. Now, this is a deep topic, what we've talked about tonight, and what I've been able to do with you is only introduce you to it and scratch the surface. It's a whistle-stop tour. It's not a comprehensive course. But I hope it's been helpful to the extent that, that it is an overview. If you want to learn more, I've got a couple of books to recommend to you. There's a lot of good books out there, but these are two of my favorites, and I suggest you start here. The first one is a book called, excuse me, Character Disturbance by psychologist George K. Simon. The second one is called Understanding the Borderline Mother by Dr. Christine Ann Lawson. I would like your feedback, audience, listeners, viewers. I'd like your feedback in the comments underneath wherever you find this video. Tell me what you think about this. Give me your questions. But I have a question for you. Would you be interested in coming to a class, an online video class, if I put one together on this? Something where I could not only teach you some things, but we could have a good long session of Q&A and talk with each other. If that would be of interest to you, let me know in the comments underneath this video, and that'll give me an indication of what I can put together. So this is the point of the show, of course, where we ask for your cold, hard cash money. We would love to have your support. We rely on you for support to make the show. Love to have you as a member, a disaffectant, if you will. Monthly subscribing members get an invitation to our private members-only Discord chat server where we have special events and where we can talk out of the public eye. And it's a kind of social media that has only about 5% of the nonsense and bullshittery that you see on Twitter and TikTok. This is a really good group of people, and I'd like to welcome you there. If you'd like to become a member and help us, go to disaffectedpod.substack.com and become a paid subscriber. And next week, for members only, I'm going to put a version of this in written form up on there, and I'm going to let everybody see it. But for members only, I'm going to have a second section behind the paywall where I go through all the common objections and misunderstandings and confusions about Cluster B. That's going to be a member-only benefit. If you want, you can also join on subscribestar.com/disaffected. That's our other platform where we take memberships. Same content goes up in both places. And if you don't want to subscribe every month, I get it. Real easy. I want you to look at the description underneath this video where you're seeing it. I put a live link for one-off donations to us. And if you forget that, just remember our website, disaffected.com, and then click on support us. And thank you very much. We really do appreciate it. So one more announcement. Do not forget to join us this coming Thursday at, wait, what is today? Actually, no, I can't. I'm amending this on the fly. This coming Thursday, we do our live stream on Thursdays. I'm so glad I remembered this before the show went out. We are going to have my friend George Zamarripa on soon for a live stream, and we're going to do cop cams. But actually, this coming Thursday is March 19th, and the live stream is going to be a simulcast. I'm going to be on a panel with he's not yet Dr. Ryan Rogers, therapist in training, Dr. Soad Tabrizi, who's a mental health therapist, and Jake Freeman, who is also a mental health counselor. They're all very clued into Cluster B. We're all going to be talking on a panel with each other, and Ryan is going to pipe it out to his people, and I'm going to pipe it out to Disaffected's platforms too. So this is coming up this Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Look on Substack and Subscribestar. I will put an announcement making just in case the time changes, but I'll have links for you and everything. So everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you next week.